I want to get on and tell everyone who I am and what I'm doing and why. So, I'm Pam, and I had a baby girl, a little terrier mix, and I had her when she was a puppy, and she was with me and my constant for 15 years. And so it was a little over a year after her passing that I even explored the idea of getting a new dog. And I went to the local shelter and I looked around, and it just didn't feel like it was right, that I was ready after all. But one thing I did notice is the the kennels were really small, and there was a lot of feces on the ground. And so I noticed that they weren't walked that often and cooped up in that small kennel. Another thing that I noticed was on the tags on their kennels, it didn't say anything about them. There was a few that had some characteristics about that dog, but for the majority, all it said was not neutered, straight. And I I felt so strongly that my my what I'm supposed to do right now is to foster and help out shelters and help dogs to find the right home. And so after that, I had reached out to that shelter and sent an email. And I didn't get a response, so I moved on and I tried another shelter. And it wasn't the shelter, it was someone that works with the shelter. And so I should have realized that and went to a different source instead of trying to contact them. But the lady had told me that because I didn't have a fenced in yard, that she just didn't want to explore that as an option for me. We didn't discuss much about it. I told her I could do a kennel and I could do a runner, and she said that she would rather have the dog put down than to stay tied up and get attacked by an animal or freeze to death. And that was really disappointing because it was kind of an insult to me, like I wouldn't care for the dog. And and so I was discouraged, and I questioned proceeding with going and doing fostering until I saw on that the local shelter was asking for help because we had a unusual freeze that was coming up, and the real feel was going to be in the negative, like -5. And for Texas, we're not used to that. It's not something that happens all the time, or really, it's very rare for that kind of temperature and wind chill. So there was freeze warnings letting us know about this. That shelter kept just blasting that they wanted help. They wanted some people to foster the dogs temporarily until the freeze was over. So I reached out to them again, and I reached out to them a couple times and consistently commented when they were asking for help on Facebook, because it seemed like Facebook was the only way that I could communicate with them. But even that fell short, because when it really mattered, they didn't respond to me, and they didn't respond to other people when I was saying, what's going on, we're trying to help, where are you? Other people started commenting too, and it was concerning. So I actually took that as they have it under control. They don't need help, but it was frustrating because they kept asking for help. And I let them know that in one of the comments, but this particular shelter, who is in charge of it, is deleting things. So it's not something that you can go back to and see. They're trying to cover themselves, but that's beside the point. I don't want to get too much into that. From there, that night came. I was at work, and by the time I got back to town, it was already 26 degrees, and I went by the shelter, and I drove in. Nobody's there. Nothing was going on. This was about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And so I called to the dogs because it was pretty quiet, and a lot of them started barking. And I knew that there were a good amount of dogs still there, still in their kennels and not moved. And what really just irritated me about that is because not just me, but there were other people that were willing to step up, and there was really no effort to get them taken care of. So in my frustration, I again messaged this shelter. Instead of going through email or making comments, I messaged them and I got a response. And they said that the dogs had tarps that were put around their kennels to stop the wind, and they had igloos with straw to keep them warm. And I said, I'm still concerned because of the extreme cold. There was someone who seen that message and that cared for the dogs, and her name was Jennifer, and she called me, and she said that she was scrambling she had a plan. She wanted to get the dogs somewhere, and I told her I have this shelter. When it got quiet, I figured they were working on that, and I went and said, how can I help? And we were loading the dogs up. I knew with the amount of dogs that we could use some more help. So I reached out to my wonderful family, who is very animal loving all around, just like me. And so it was really easy to make that request to them through our group messenger. And they were there for me. And it was pretty awesome that I can count on them like that. So they came. I had a couple more cars to help load up, 3 exact, and so we ended up helping and taking in each dogs to care for them in the meantime. So we took 9 animals, dogs, between the 4 of us. Yeah, 4. And I'm screwing up again. Anyway, so 9 animals, and then the shelter, Jennifer, she was gonna move dogs into the kennels that opened up inside with the ones that we had taken. So moving them around, so all together we got about 13 or 15 dogs into a warmer place that night. Some dogs were still left outside, but they were like huskies and dogs that just wouldn't do very well with the transportation and being trusted with us and not running away, or however, whatever the concern was that Jennifer had. And I appreciate that she wanted us to have the dogs that we could handle and like mentor for that. One thing, I was very frustrated with the shelter, but this woman was someone that stood out to me as really caring for the animals, and I could tell because she thanked me over and over and over and gave me a hug, and it was definitely an appreciation hug. So we eventually took some of the dogs back, but after the cold, however, one dog got adopted by my sister, and then my other sister, she took in and fostered a dog, or dogs, when it got too much. You can see in the pictures that I had 5 big dogs in my gym, and it was a lot. It was a lot to keep up with for a week. And so when it started warming up, Ashley, my sister, she took in some dogs to help me with that. And so that's what started this whole fostering gig. Short story long, that's what it is, and it's something that I wanted to do in honor of my baby girl. So in conclusion, and what I'd like to add that I forgot to mention is, with the fosters that we had temporarily with the freeze, we took pictures, we spent time with the dog, and shared to others what that dog was about, and putting them out there where they wouldn't be before. And I'd like to think that we contributed to some dogs getting adopted. So there's Willow, who's the most recent. Then we have Safari, who was an awesome dog, and I loved her, and I'm so happy. Jennifer had called me, and I got to talk to the people that were interested in her and sold the sale. So I really like that we teamed up like that, and I could be a phone call away to help share who this dog is, because they wouldn't really know. And that's important to make sure that you're finding the right fit for you and for that dog. And I loved it. So then there's Birdie. Birdie, I think, got adopted because of a Facebook post that we put, and someone had said that they went ahead and adopted Birdie. And Birdie is an amazing dog too. And so we were very happy to hear that when he went back to the shelter. It wasn't long that someone had reached out from Houston to pick him up. And that was awesome. I feel like I'm missing a dog. And right now, I have Bud. And there was one dog out of the 5 that I had that is still at the shelter. Please consider volunteering at a local shelter, doing dishes, or taking out the trash, cleaning kennels, which isn't the highlight of your day, but in the end, it is appreciated by the dogs more than they know, and it makes you feel good. You can take 2 hours out of your weekend to do something that's meaningful. And we have seen some not so great things during this. We witness the dirty, the ugly, and we just gotta keep going, because in that there's also positive, and the feeling you have of knowing that you've put a dog into a loving home and temporarily giving them and sharing them love and warmth more than what they could ever get at a shelter. On the negative side, they're not there to showcase. So if you do foster, which I definitely recommend, put them out there, do your marketing, otherwise they won't get noticed. And I appreciate you sharing and following. Thank you.